The first thing I'll show you are my 8-bit and my 16-bit galleries. Now, I'm a big fan of the old NES and Super NES systems. So I've been doing a lot of different pixel art builds from those various games. You might notice some floating blocks there. Those are my control blocks for moving these builds around. And I'm probably going to leave those there until the entire thing's done. But you can see a lot of familiar characters here if you're a fan of the old NES or Super NES systems, and one Sega Genesis character that we all know, of course. It's also fun to take some of the characters and sort of put them together as well. This floor is dedicated specifically to 16-bit SNES Squaresoft characters, some of the best games ever made. As you can see here on the bottom row, this is what was called when it was released in the United States Final Fantasy III. In reality, that's Final Fantasy VI. And what you see just above that is from what was called in the United States Final Fantasy II, back when I originally played it years ago for the SNES. In reality, that is Final Fantasy IV. So you'll recognize the various characters from that. These took me a little while to build. And I want to redo some of them a little bit because since the time that I built these, the various concrete colors came out, which makes for great pixel art. Secret of Evermore, classic game there, Secret of Mana. And then over here, a lot of different characters from one of my very favorite games ever, Chrono Trigger. If you've never played Chrono Trigger, you definitely should. And then if we ascend up here, this is one I've been working on for a while. This is my 8-bit gallery. How many of these you'll recognize. Obviously there's Mega Man and Mario and some of your mainstays, but then you have to have a little bit of a better eye maybe to catch this one. Guardian Legend. Or maybe this character back here. This is a game called Crystallis, which was released near the end of the NES's run and is a really advanced RPG for that system. Blaster Master is a classic game. Of course, you've got Super Mario 2, which has an interesting story behind it as well. Originally released in Japan, not as Super Mario 2 at all, but as a completely different game. It wasn't even originally a Mario game, but they rehashed it for the NES system and called it Super Mario 2, and essentially reskinned the characters to make them look like Mario, the Princess, Toad, and Luigi. Still a great game though. And yeah, there we get more Blaster Master there. Of course, the original Final Fantasy, right? Classic. And yeah, I like this build. I feel surrounded by old friends when I come here and work on this. The other thing I like about this is I can come here and do one of these. I'd say an 8-bit one because it's easier. I can, once I get a proper image off the internet, I often use perler bead images for these. I can do one of these maybe in about 5-10 minutes. Easy. Some are obviously bigger than others. I'd say doing these right maybe takes about 20 minutes. Maybe once you get fast at it, 15, but yeah, I want to redo some of these. Of course, new block types come out, new block colors come out, and then you can redo them and make them a little better, which is kind of fun, but kind of irritating at the same time. Got some classics, got one of the classics, Pac-Man down there. That's not exact pixel art of the game, it's just a rough replica, but I think it looks alright. Originally, a friend of mine was working on this one, but I ended up taking it over later and redoing it. Now, and there, of course, there's Ganon from A Link to the Past. You've only seen the beginning. of these galleries while we're here. Why don't we zip around and look at some of the surrounding stuff? It's mostly video games. So there's Mega Man X versus Zero. Yes, I copied him from the other Mega Man X build. I use World Edit to do copy pasting. Okay, now here's something. Now this baby took me a while. I set out to make an exact replica of an NES. That's what you see here. What I really need to do actually is to get a mod or somehow modify the parameters of the game, and I have done it before. So the view is more than the game typically allows for the draw distance. So I can really show you some of this, but for now we'll just let it all res in. Now when I did this build, if you're a pretty good builder, you probably figured this out, but the first thing I created was the lid because it had the writing on it, and I had to get the writing just right. That was very important, so I used that to set the scale for the rest of the build. And the thing was so big, I decided to use it as a building in itself. But before we go to the inside to see what we built on the inside of it, you're going to love it, I hope. Why don't we just fly around and take a look at some of the details of this baby. I built this mostly from looking at my actual NES system and just copying what I saw, getting it as close to scale as I could here. For now, let's go ahead and so we can see under. I should probably light this up somehow eventually. But I even got the screws. I went all out. Even I figured if I was going to do this, I might as well do it right. Even if you go underneath, if you look in an actual NES system, there's this grooved area underneath. And I got all that according to the actual build. There's nothing under there currently. Those little ridges. And of course, we have to have a place to hook up the cords. So there we go. I actually want to change this out to concrete. You want a little world edit lesson real quick? Just before we run in. To look at more. This is what I referred to earlier as a control block. Let's move it one in. I could go out more. Okay. That's just a place for me to select. The wooden axe is the default wand for making selections. So I want to select that. I want to come here. I prefer to use glass for these. Right there. Because glass doesn't affect light. So you left click one end of your build, of your selection area, or in this case your selection volume, and then you right click the other, and that sets the two parameters for it. Now we can smash those blocks. We don't need them. They were just there so we could select those block locations. So now whatever command I put in after a double slash will apply to that area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put replace. Now the color red is designated as 14. So I'm going to go replace wool 14. That means red wool with concrete 14. World edit. And I'll replace this with actually black concrete as well. And I think it makes it look that much better. It makes it look that much more accurate. Now when I built this, of course all there was wool. So now you have options. I'm very happy with the concrete. And of course you gotta have power. So here's the power hookups with all the riding and everything. I'll update all that to concrete eventually. It'll be fun. It'll be good. Now let's fly back around. You know what? I haven't showed you the top of it. There's a village. How do you find their village? It's right next to the NES. I don't think I'd want to live right beside a giant NES. I don't know, maybe I would. Now, give it time to do its drawing. The video capture software slows this down a little bit, so you just have to be patient with it. Not much to see yet. I had to build this baby pretty much all the way to the top of the world, by the way. You can see our height now is 258. I had to do that to get it right. Now you'll notice some glass here. I'll explain what that's for in a moment. It might even be self-explanatory. I'm going to let that res in without looking through too much because I don't want to give away what you're going to see down there too early. Okay. As you can see, this is just the top. It's nothing special. The only maybe feature that differentiates the top other than the lid at the front and designing that is that I did put in this set of ridges here, just like a normal NES has. And this is one of several entrances to the inside. Now I want to go ahead and prepare you for what you're about to see here. First of all, let's drink some milk. Threw that one down to get rid of the lighting effect. This is a whole gallery dedicated to one of my favorite games, and specifically, this is one of my favorite games because my father and I played this game constantly. When I was growing up, I have fond memories playing this with him. It was one of our favorite games, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Now, they made a Punch-Out! Later when, for obvious reasons, they wanted to dissociate themselves from Mike Tyson. But I didn't play that one. I played Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! With my dad. And I wanted to remain true to the original, and so I did. So we'll let this res in for just a moment. I'll show you what we've got. Yes, this took me a while. There's the big dedication to my dad. Makes sense to dedicate this particular build to him. He would definitely approve. He passed away back in 2009. So, yeah, I wanted to do a big tribute for him and play Minecraft at the same time. Now, remember I mentioned that glass in the ceiling? I'll show you what that glass is for. So as you can see, this room is pretty much dark, right? Because it's covered over with opaque blocks. No sunlight's really filtering down, but it doesn't look that way, does it? If you look at the build, you can clearly see these artworks, right? The reason because this wall is actually layered. So as you can see, there's a thin part back here. And every gallery I'm going to show you in here is done like this. This is one of 3 major galleries. And you can see that glass up there. Now that glass lets that sunlight down, but it only lights up these artworks, these builds. And it creates an almost television type effect, which I really like. It feels like it really showcases the pieces more, and I like that. Took me a while to come up with that. I'm sure it's not original, but it's original to me. I used glass for the various fonts underneath for captioning what these are. And the sunlight shines through the glass, and that's how it's illuminated. This next one is dedicated to what is obviously one of the biggest classics, and continues to be, obviously, you would know this, one of the biggest game franchises out there, the Zelda franchise. And this is the original Legend of Zelda for the NES, which I played for the first time when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I'm 40 now, by the way. And yeah, still, great part of my childhood, and still a game that I play annually and love it. I just wanted to sort of make a dedication by doing the items I thought they would be fun to do for whatever reason. Then I decided, oh, we can't leave out the monsters. Then I decided to do the different boss monsters, and from there it just kind of became what it is. And yeah, there's our Triforce in the bottom, which I modeled after the start screen, except I used the lighting to split it into 3 parts, which is a little different from the original game. As you can see, there's sunlight coming down through these different passages to make that effect happen. These are lit up exactly the same way as I showed you with the Punch-Out gallery, with glass going up there. You can't see it from here, but it's there. The third and final gallery is probably the one that took the most work out of all 3 of these. And it's one of my favorite classic video game series. And I actually went all out with this one for every one of the games that was released to my knowledge for the NES system, or at least every one I played. This is my Mega Man gallery. Now at first I was going to build I guess you'd call them the sprites for these little guys, which in Mega Man 1, that is actually what you get there for the profiles. But for the rest of the Mega Man 2 and forward, they get their own splash art type profiles. So I decided to base the build on that. Eventually I'm going to build all the sprites for these guys too. But this gallery is just for the selection screens, which took considerable work, but it was fun. Again, I feel so familiar here, it feels like I'm surrounded by friends. In this case, I guess technically I'm surrounded by enemies, but this was my childhood, and it feels good to be here. Yeah. So there it is, based on the same premise, right? That the sunlight lights up what's behind there. Took a while to build that around it. But yeah. There it is. I found some good pixel art online. Non-Minecraft pixel art that allowed me to figure out exactly how to get the dimensions right for these. And yeah, it really worked out. For the individual profiles of each robot, I actually used perler bead art for those. And at some point, I am going to rebuild these in real life with perler beads and hang them in my gaming room in my house. It'll be cool. So what's really fun about Minecraft pixel art is that it's, how do I put it? It's interchangeable with perler bead art, which is really cool. So if you're into perler beading or doing some of your favorite nerd fandom with perler beads, that means you can also transport that to Minecraft and vice versa.